Nancy. Welcome to Fast Forward. Welcome to the Chamber Foundation today.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. It is really a privilege to be having this conversation with you. Your bio, I won't even bother reading it because it's long and impressive. But what I do want our viewers to know is that you're the Executive Vice President and Chief Advocacy and Engagement Officer at AARP. And so what that means, viewers, is that she is a big force behind one of the most powerful advocacy organizations in the world. Every year, it seems like, wearing her government affairs hat, she's recognized as one of the top lobbyists in Washington. But she also oversees hundreds of people, staff and volunteers around the country, people who get up every day thinking about how to make our lives and our families and our communities even stronger and better. So thank you. That was just a nice way of saying how smart you are and how experienced you are. Nancy, I just want to open with kind of a table setting question. Why should people not in the aging business care about aging?
Well, the country is getting older. And let me thank you, first of all, for having me here today. I feel like the warm-up pitcher for the all-stars you have coming after me. It's really quite a lineup you've assembled. And we are very interested in being here to talk about something increasingly important to AARP, and that is community. It's perfect because yesterday was National Good Neighbor Day. So we and others are celebrating communities across the country. You asked about aging, and the aging of America and the future of communities are inextricably linked. As you said, the country is getting older, and we believe that cities and communities can effectively address the needs of the 50 plus. They are well positioned to be at the center of positive change. Carolyn, you had a few statistics, and let me add a few to that.
Sure.
A reminder that seniors are a massive and rapidly growing constituency. By 2030, 1 of 5 Americans will be age 65 and older. That's around 78 million people. 10,000 Americans turn 65 every day, and 10,000 will turn 65 every day for another 10 years until 2030. That's the year, believe it or not, the first of 72 million millennials will start turning 50. And by the way, they'll all be eligible for AARP membership. The key point here is this is not a one and done phenomenon. We're all going to be older for the foreseeable future. And the demographic shift is going to impact all states, cities, and communities. Every one of the top 200 largest cities in the US will see an increase in the percentage of their population that's age 65 and older over the next few years. And for example, Austin, Texas, and Charlotte, North Carolina are 2 cities considered hotspots for the young and hip, but they're aging right along with the rest of the country. Austin's going to see a 31% increase in its senior population between 2019 and 2024, and Charlotte will have a 27% increase during the same time. Now, the implications of the aging of America are, as you point out, serious and considerable at both the federal and the state level. We know federal policymakers must address growing problems and challenges on critical programs like Social Security and Medicare and others that serve senior health, nutrition, safety kinds of issues. And we know that Social Security was originally designed to supplement retirement savings, but today 1 out of every 4 households relies on that program for 90% or more of its income. So at the state and community level, the challenge is no less severe. And as you pointed out, communities are adjusting to the effects of COVID. They're facing, many of them, major revenue shortfalls. And to make matters worse, governments have already begun dipping into their rainy day funds to deal with the impact of COVID-19. While our leaders in Washington are mired in gridlock and some partisan bickering, what we're finding is that mayors, community leaders, nonprofit leaders, businessmen and women across the country are coming together to sort through how to tackle some of these issues and get things done. And that's why AARP is so pleased to work with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the National League of Cities, the Democratic Mayors Alliance, and the Forum for Community Leaders representing Republican mayors, working with them and working with groups like yours that speak to the business community to see what we can do, as you point out, going forward.
You know, people living longer and better. These gains have happened over the last 100 years or so. So it feels like we haven't had much practice with the impacts of aging, and certainly the demographic shifts. I was shocked to hear those statistics about Austin and Charlotte. It's definitely not what you think about every day when you think about those cities. But, you know, in terms of getting more practice, are there places that are doing a good job of kind of preparing and getting all of those groups working around common goals?
Well, there is good news. We know that across the country, there is a lot that's happening that is very positive. I'm hesitant to declare, as some folks do, virtually any change a movement, but it's clear to us that something is going on. And perhaps the most tangible example of just how fast the community trend is growing can be seen in our Livable Communities work, which at its core recognizes that as America ages, people want to stay in their homes and in their neighborhoods. In 2012, AARP joined the World Health Organization to be the sponsor of the WHO's global network of age-friendly cities and communities. Any state, city, or community is welcome to join. However, members of the network must do a few things. They have to complete a baseline assessment of the age friendliness of their community, develop a community-wide action plan, monitor progress against the action plans, and establish mechanisms to involve older adults. And many of the towns, cities, counties, states that have enrolled in the network frame their work around what we call the 8 domains of livability. These include many of the areas you're going to be discussing this week, such as outdoor spaces and buildings, transportation, housing, social participation, respect and social inclusion, work and civic engagement, communication and information, and community and health services. The availability and quality of these community features impact the well-being of older adults and help make these communities livable for people no matter their age. And again, while some communities are tackling all 8 of the domains, others are choosing to focus on fewer or combining some of them. Just to give you some idea of the growth, in the last 10 years, nearly 500 states and communities representing over a third of the US population have joined the network, including 21 of the 25 largest cities in the country. Forward-looking states and territories in the network include Colorado, Michigan, New York, Maine, Massachusetts, Florida, and the US Virgin Islands. And I hazard a guess that this is such a phenomenon that I think that if there were to be a 7th season of Schitt's Creek, it could include an episode about Schitt's Creek joining the age-friendly network. That's how much we're seeing across the country.
That is a remarkable network and movement. And first reference I've heard to Schitt's Creek in one of our talks. So TV writers for that.
Well, in honor of the Emmys.
You know, as longevity's increased, I saw an interesting quote the other day that said that we're living extra years, but the extra years are being added to the middle of life, not less toward the end. So is there kind of an age range that you're focusing on, or is it a big aperture, or are you looking at a real specific slice?
Well, our Livable Communities work is looking across all ages, to be honest. And if you think of a curb cutout, that's as important for somebody in a wheelchair as somebody pushing a baby carriage.
That's
and
right.
So our hope is, as communities sit down and look at what they need to do for their aging population, they're going to be looking for solutions for all generations. And we think that's the key to this. We also think that's the reason so many communities have signed up and so many are interested in moving ahead.
I could ask you so many more questions about what makes a good livable community. It feels to me like if you're looking at, young people, young families, older people, it really is about making sure that families can stay together and that communities as a whole can thrive. Is there any one issue or lever that is kind of the most fundamental to get right?
Well, probably not any one, but many. And I think the key in communities that are in the process now of doing their planning and trying to adjust to the kind of reality of COVID is that they're in very close touch with the residents, finding ways to talk with them, finding ways to see what issues are coming to the forefront. And we could talk about this a little more later, what we see on the horizon. But I think though many people have a kind of dystopian view of kind of the world right now, a lot of challenges, but many communities are focused on what they had come early in their kind of age-friendly planning process to focus on, and that's their kind of four very positive things. The first is there's what we call at ARP the kind of the pro bono dividend. If we were in person with an audience, I'd probably ask at this point for anyone who's volunteered to put his or her hand up. We know that 3 out of 4 adults age 50 and up have volunteered in the past. They want to give back, make an impact on their communities, and help people in need. And in 2018, a study estimated the economic value of hours that 50 plus volunteers contributed alone added up to a remarkable $140 billion. Now more than ever, retirees who want to give back are being enlisted into work on the area's biggest challenges. We're seeing across the country, one just came to us the other day from Grayson County, Virginia, an effort to support the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Volunteers in this age-friendly community set up and help staff a phone hotline for isolated older adults. We're seeing that all across the country. And so this wonderful dividend of people wanting to give back is something that we see communities trying to draw on. The second is what we lovingly call the wisdom of crowds. Older adults are generally more motivated to share information as a matter of civic duty, and it's one reason that civic platforms, both in person and online, are emerging at ever increasing rates in age-friendly states and communities, with the goal of kind of harnessing the collective intelligence of the citizens to solve complex social problems and discover opportunities for innovation. We think forward-looking cities are doing this now and are going to continue to do it. And then, of course, third area is you have an innovation muscle. We tend to think of innovation as something that's done exclusively in Silicon Valley and Route 123 in Boston by young people in skinny blue jeans and black t-shirts. But the reality is that there are kind of everyday innovators across the country, and many communities are beginning to harness that. And they're also being able to harness the real interest in the entrepreneurial community right now, people who want to find solutions to help particularly older people in their homes and help them stay in their community. And then finally, what we've come to see in COVID and what communities are leaders are focused on, many business leaders we've heard from, is kind of open spaces, public spaces, room to walk, sit, and breathe, have taken on a new meaning. And it's entirely possible that we'll have tables outdoors at restaurants post-COVID, as we have right now. And we joke all the time during the pandemic, we've also seen the reemergence of retro transportation system called your feet. and maybe a couple of wheels or a piece of wood to help form a scooter. There's a lot of really good stuff happening across the country, and this is such a wonderful opportunity for us to connect to your constituency and to business leaders everywhere to say, we want to work with you, and we want to support efforts to figure out how we come out of this phase even stronger than we were before.
Sure. There's been a saying for a long time that in business that, these days, every company is a tech company, right? So, I feel like with these kinds of demographics, every company will be paying attention to this silver tsunami, I've heard it called, of consumers and, of neighbors and constituents. So you are just so optimistic, and your passion really shows. It's really remarkable to get to talk to you.
Thank you. It's, as you know, and as you'll discuss throughout this week, it's an enormous challenge in so many areas. In healthcare, public health used to be what we focused on and got messages about: don't throw garbage in your stream. And now public health is the key to our lives. And the healthcare delivery system, much more in community today than it was even 5 or 10 years ago. Think about urgent care locations or going to your local drugstore. I'm fascinated by your session on food. When the pandemic started, I did a call with all of my state directors, and I expected to hear the usual. And what they said to me was the single thing that surprised them was the food needs of particularly older residents. So we have to grapple with that and so much more.
It's mind-boggling, really. And I would, as I said, I could ask you questions for another hour. But tell us, where can people go? What's the best resource for people who want to dive deeper and kind of stay connected to this conversation today?
Yeah, well, we would love to hear from people, and of course, ultimately connect with you back home through our AARP offices. But the best place to get information is to go to aarp.org/livable. We have a newsletter that we hope you'll sign up for, because it has up-to-date information, best practices. We love to highlight what's happening across the country. It's really a wonderful kind of e-newsletter. And then we have other information on our websites. And we can also be able to tell you where, in what communities, AARP is especially active with our programming, with our volunteers, and with our staff.
Well, that's fantastic. Your nationwide footprint is quite helpful for enlisting people in this movement. I hope that you'll come back to continue this important conversation.
I will.
I've got a last question. If we were sitting here, if I invite you back again next year, a year from now, we're doing Fast Forward again. What will be different? What do you hope will be different?
Well, I hope we are in the post-pandemic period for sure, and that we really are sitting there, and that we've been able to chart some really great examples of partnerships at the local level with mayors, nonprofit leaders, business leaders that have really come together to move us all to the next point. There needs to be a concerted effort, as we all know, to deal with the myriad issues that the pandemic has raised, and to kind of get back to a firm path on economic development across the country.
Well, of course, at the Chamber, we hope so too. We'd like to get business back to work and communities back thriving again. So, as we like to say, we've got to hold hands and do this work together. It's important work.
Right.
Nancy, thank you for your time. It was really nice to kick off Fast Forward with you. I think you've set the table in a really smart way, talking about the movement and community building and what makes a livable community. So it's a great send-off for the conversation that is to come today and over the next 3 days. So thank you again for your help and your friendship and your smarts.
Well, thank you. And I really look forward to hearing the other speakers.
Great.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.